Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 7 of What If Naruto Was the Prince of Olympus. If you guys enjoy this what if, and want to see part 8 of it, comment down below and let me know. The like goal for this video is 200 likes. So like this video, to let me know that you're interested in this series, and you want the next part. Check out my new videos of My Hero Academia what ifs in my second channel, and give it some love as well. Link is in the description. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Olympus. Inside her palace, Aphrodite looked at herself in the mirror, and she saw nothing but herself. Not like that, of course. Unknown to most, even the goddess of beauty herself was affected by her own power. Aphrodite looked at herself in the mirror. A few moments ago she had dark hair and dark brown eyes. Now her hair had become bright blonde with sky blue eyes. Her features became much toner. And her face became much more beautiful, almost to the impossible level. This was her true appearance. Yes, Aphrodite's ideal of beauty was herself. Taking the hairbrush on her makeup table, Aphrodite put it on her golden blonde hair, and slowly moved the object along the incredible smooth surface of her long and curly hair, tilting her head to the side. Blonde and sky blue eyes, it was just like him. It had been 2 years since the Prince of Olympus left them, 2 years since Aphrodite saw Naruto jump from that cliff down to the mortal world below. At first, she thought he was crazy and had become mad because of what she told him to read, but after hearing from Hades that the boy was still alive, Aphrodite realized how little she thought about him. His disappearance brought huge chaos to Olympus. Every single god and goddess was sent all around the world to find him by his parents. However, no matter how they tried and how many days, weeks, months and years had passed, they couldn't find the Prince of Olympus. Even two of the best trackers, Artemis and Athena, weren't able to find him or even come close to his mysterious location. Zeus and Hera were shocked when they found out about Naruto's reason for leaving from Athena, when the goddess of wisdom gave them the Greek mythology book Naruto borrowed from her library that night. Aphrodite decided to keep her mouth shut for the rest of the night, because she didn't know what they would do to her if they found out she was the one who told him to read that book to find out the reason she cheated on his brother. Ares was nearly blasted out of the throne room by Zeus's master bolt because he couldn't keep himself from laughing. Hera was really distracted, and she spent most of her time these past 2 years around the world looking for her son. The numbers of divorced marriage couples rose dramatically the last 2 years because of this, to the point Aphrodite fell sick most of the time, and barely had the energy to do anything, because of the lack of love from the mortal world. If not for Hestia, who quickly stepped up and comforted Hera, Aphrodite and the goddess of the hearth would have faded away by now. Everything had become quite the past 2 months, at least until the sudden accident happened after the winter solstice. The Olympian gods were barely around Olympus at this time. They had their duty of taking care of their domains, and also at the same time continue their searching, and Naruto wasn't the only thing that was being looked for. A mischievous smile appeared on her face at the mention of him. Naruto wasn't only incredibly attractive, and she was talking about a 17-year-old teenager boy, but he was also incredibly powerful, showing enough skills alone to fight on par with the god of war. And enough power to fight on par with an individual whose power rivaled the primordial beings. He was also very caring, warm, and even though they only just spent a little more than a few minutes together, he was kind of fun to hang around, to say the least. But the thing about him that aroused her the most was the enormous amount of love within his body. She was the goddess of love. She could feel the love within a person's heart. She couldn't explain it in word, but she could feel the love in a more physical way, and she could tell the size of these loves within different people, which represent the feeling they would have for their partner when one appear. The bigger it is, the more feeling they will hold for their partner, the more they will love, the more they will stay loyal to their partner. This love could increase or reduce in size depending on the situation, but normally, it would stay the way it was. The girl Naruto falls in love with, no doubt would be the luckiest girl in the world, because in all her immortal life of being the goddess of love, she had never felt such a powerful and enormous amount of love from someone like him before. He completely surpassed every loyal married couple in history, even his mother, who was the goddess of marriage, and faithfully loyal to her cheating husband. The luckiest girl in the world, Aphrodite, the luckiest goddess. She couldn't help but giggle at the sound of that. It did have a nice ring with her name. Aphrodite was snapped out from her thought when a blinding flash of red light appeared in the middle of her palace. Her expression didn't change in the slightest when her lover, the god of war, appeared. However, the second after that, her eyes widened in shock when he pulled out his sword and slashed violently around the place, kicking and punching, destroying everything that was in his sight. "Hey!" Aphrodite shouted, standing up. "What are you doing to my palace?" she asked angrily. "That fucking punk." With a hatred-filled mind, Ares was completely oblivious of Aphrodite's cry. "Someday, I will fucking kill you." He roared and kicked over Aphrodite's wardrobe, making it fall down to the ground. The goddess of love's eyes widened in shock at what he just said. The only time she had seen the god of war this angry was when he was beaten and humiliated by Naruto, so it didn't take long for her to put two and two together. What? She ran to him and grabbed his jacket. You found Naruto. What about it? Ares asked with a grunt, his eye sockets flared with red fire. Holy Zeus, you did find our Prince. Aphrodite gasped in shock before her lips spread out in a smile. I need to go and tell. But when she was about to turn around, Aphrodite's throat was grabbed roughly by the goddess of war and he used it to pull her toward him, glaring into her blue orbs angrily. Don't you fucking dare tell them, woman, he said, gritting his teeth. His hand tightened around Aphrodite's throat, choking her. Yes, I did find him, but his location is mine only, and the fact that I found that fucking blonde will be our little secret, got that? He asked. But, love. Aphrodite tried to form some words, but she wasn't able to no matter how hard she tried. Ares was too strong, his strength was far greater than hers, the prince. The god of war raised his hand and backhanded the goddess of love hard across her face. Aphrodite fell down to the ground hard, with golden ichor running down the corner of her lips, tears falling down from her eyes as she held her bruised cheek. Don't you fucking dare call him the Prince of Olympus. Ares roared, his body flared with power, covering the entire area in red light. That title belonged to me. I'm the rightful Prince of Olympus, not your crippled husband, and especially, not that fucking mortal. He ignored her cry. If you spill a word to them, Aphrodite, I will make sure every single one of your children will be seriously hurt, both mentally and physically. My sons, after all, love to have fun with pretty girls, and he walked out of the palace, grunting mostly to himself. Aphrodite just sat there and sobbed, her hand holding her cheek with ichor dripping down to the ground from her lips. Tears couldn't stop dropping from her eyes. Listening to the music while doing his everyday morning exercise was something Naruto greatly enjoyed. The iPod must be one of the best inventions that he came across in this world. He could store thousands or even millions of songs within such a small place, and listen to the beats anytime he wants, and anywhere he wants. Normally, he would prefer the strong and fast kind of music like rock or heavy metal, but lately, he had come to like Caitlin's pop songs, and downloaded some of her best albums onto his iPod. He couldn't help but admit how good her voice was and how well she could sing. Kind of made him reconsider about his decision about calling Daniel a fan maniac of Caitlyn, not to mention that she was not only good on stage, but also the best in a movie studio. Currently, Naruto was doing his daily 100-mile run around Harvard campus. Wearing long black pant, orange t-shirt and black jacket with hood over his head, headphones in his ear, his usual combo, Naruto woke up around 3 in the morning, and had been running for 2 hours since then. He didn't stop for a second to rest, just kept on challenging the limit of his stamina, which by far was nowhere near his limit yet. Then, he felt someone approaching him. Ohayo gozaimasu. Good morning. Naruto turned to his right and widened his eyes slightly, when he saw Caitlyn running right next to him, with her blonde hair tied into a ponytail behind her head. She was wearing a dark color sports bra that spoke volume of her amazing ample bust and toned figure, exposing her toned stomach and small waist. Same color fitness pants that reached past her knees and clung to her lower body like a second skin, once again showing the world why she was the new icon of the entertainment world. And lastly, white sports shoes used for running. Good morning, Caitlyn. Naruto greeted her with a grin, removing the headphone in his left ear. No need for Japanese, the two kept on running, smiling at each other. But I wanted to surprise you, she giggled. You do this every day. Yeah, it is a part of my morning workout routine. Naruto nodded his head. What about you? I hope you're doing fine. It was clear for Caitlyn the blonde didn't ask her about her health or her morning exercise schedule. I'm fine, don't worry, Naruto. She smiled at him. Once again, thank you. I don't want to know what would have happened without you there. Don't mention it, Caitlyn. He then turned to her. You took it better than I thought. Not the first time. Yes, believe it or not, it was not the first time a fan got overexcited like that. Caitlyn sighed, looking away from Naruto. I guess that is the reason why my father allowed John to carry guns within him, to protect me in case anything bad happened. I doubt Ares is a fan of your songs. In movies, Naruto could only nod his head, and I doubt John could handle a god of war, even with a tank he added in his head. Say, Naruto, are you up for the trip to New York today? She asked, changing the topic quickly. Of course, Naruto grinned. The trip to New York was going to take place today, and they were going to various places, before stopping at New York Metropolitan Museum of Art. He hoped that with this visit he could learn more about the godly realm, and find out more what could be possibly happening to it. You? Yes, it's one of my most favorite cities. She said brightly. My first music night was there. Really? Naruto asked. Wow, that's cool, kind of like homecoming for you, right? Of course. Caitlyn smiled before smiling mischievously at him. Tilting her head to the side, she quickly grabbed the unused headphone before Naruto could stop her. Hey, what are you listening? She put it on her ear. Oh hey. A massive smile spread out on her face when she heard this song. I thought you said you're not a fan of mine, she told him. Want my signature now? Changed my mind after realizing your voice wasn't half bad, Naruto joked and got a light punch on his right arm. His morning jogging ended like that. The fuck? Daniel cried out in shock, horror and jealousy, before slamming the newspaper down on Naruto's table, surprising him because he was in the state of nearly falling asleep. "What now?" he asked while yawning, looking at the black-haired boy lazily. "Liked it or not, you might have picked up some of Shikamaru's bad habits of falling asleep anytime he wants." "Read the front page," Daniel pointed out, glaring at Naruto. "That guy is clearly you." Naruto grabbed the newspaper and gave it a glance, his eyes widened slightly at the article and the front picture. Mysterious man seen with Caitlin Sharp this morning. And the front picture was unmistakably the scene of him and Caitlin doing jogging with each other this morning. This must be a picture taken by an unprofessional photographer, because they couldn't capture his face hidden under the hood of his jacket, plus he was looking at Caitlin, away from the camera. Below was various lines written about Caitlin and the possibility of her love life. Even though his face was trying to remain as calm as possible, he couldn't help but feel a little worry about this. Not because of the picture of the articles, or what was written, but about the possibility of being found out by the godly world. There was a chance that Ares wouldn't tell anyone about his whereabouts. He was too hateful to do that, but if this newspaper got into the hands of someone like Athena or Artemis, they would feel suspicious about it and come to this place. Not to mention the fact that Ares could figure out his friendship with Caitlin. He had seen that warmonger wasn't very hesitating when trying to attack him with his axe, even though his lover was right there in the attack range. What would stop this war god from using Caitlin to get to him? Or maybe he was just thinking too far ahead. Maybe spending too much time around Shikamaru made him think too much and become paranoid. Or maybe he was slowly turning into a mini version of his father. He heard from Hera that Zeus was very paranoid. And? Naruto asked, giving Daniel back his newspaper. And freaking and? This guy is clearly you, Daniel pointed out. There were not many students in their class, and each of them were also minding their own business, so Naruto wasn't too worried about it. "You're the only guy I know around here would wear orange in the morning. This hoodie is clearly yours. And? You said you're not interested in her," he cried, with 2 lines of tears running down his cheeks, "and only interested in UFC fighters." "Firstly, I never said I'm not interested in her," Naruto said blankly, but it was enough to make Daniel widen his eyes in shock. "Secondly, why are you so sure this guy is me? There must be a lot of guys out there wearing orange. Hell, maybe there is a whole summer camp with orange uniforms." Naruto shrugged his shoulder, tugging the newspaper from his hand, reading it quickly before saying, "Other than spying on her life. Why don't they put the match between Brock Lesnar and Frank Mir last night on the front page, and tell us how dominated Lesnar was?" Naruto stood up and checked the clock on the wall. It was about time. "Other things, the bus will leave in 20 minutes. Naruto threw his bag on his shoulder and walked to the door. "Hey, we're not done yet, Naruto," Daniel shouted, quickly gathering his belongings. "Fishcake, wait." Unfortunately for Daniel and oh so lucky for Naruto, he was sorted to bus 99, while his self-proclaimed friend was sorted into bus 94, which meant Naruto could relax, have his own space, and be freed from Daniel's annoying stories for about 5 hours of traveling. Naruto chose a seat at the middle of the bus, beside the window, so he could look at the world outside. While there were some differences between Earth and elemental nations, Naruto couldn't help but see so many similar things between the two worlds. Pulling out his iPod, Naruto put the headphones in his ears and chose the songs. Going through various kinds of music, he stopped at the folder where he stored all of Caitlin's songs. When he was going through the list, chose the song he hadn't heard yet. He heard a voice. "You should give Love Story a chance. It was my best last year." Naruto turned his head to the side and saw Caitlin standing there smiling at him, her hands put on the chair to support her body. "Hey," she greeted him softly, with her head tilting to the side. "Hey," Naruto grinned. "You are bus 99 too?" he asked, looking at the student card lying on her generous bust. "Yes." Konoha held it in her hand and smiled at him. "Mind if I sit here?" She motioned her head to the seat next to him. "Sure, go ahead." Naruto nodded. Caitlin put her bag into the cargo hold cabin above them and sat down beside Naruto. Raising her hand to adjust the air conditioner above them, she asked, "Where is your friend?" "You mean Daniel? He is in a different bus, saving me some headache anyway." Naruto nodded his head while Caitlin giggled. "Where is your bodyguard? I thought someone like you will have him around 24/7. "John will follow behind us in his car." Caitlin smiled and raised her head when the bus roared to life. "Oh, here we go." They didn't talk much the first hour of the journey, mainly because Naruto was watching the recording of the match between Brock Lesnar and Frank Mir he missed last night, while Caitlin was reading a guidebook about New York. Many students who happened to travel on the same bus as them came and asked the blonde for her signature, asking Caitlin about her plan for her next movies and songs, or just to take a picture and selfie with their idol. Most male students came and looked at Naruto in jealousy, which he ignored. Some of them even asked Caitlin to come and sit with them, but she politely refused. "Damn." Naruto grinned and put his phone back into his pocket. The fight was awesome, and it was too bad that he couldn't have watched it live last night. "You like UFC a lot, don't you?" Caitlin asked. "Well, yeah, the only thing I find entertaining." Naruto nodded his head with a smile. "What about my music?" Well, you can say that it was added to my list, Caitlin giggled. My brother likes it too, Caitlin said. To meet up with his partners in business actually. You know, the higher class people. Yeah, I know, Naruto nodded his head. You have a brother. What is he like? He's really nice and a very hard worker. He is the CEO for my father's company. Naruto Wolf whistled. Well, Caitlin was wondering where Naruto was coming from. Clearly everyone knew about the sharps. Everyone but the blonde in front of her. Unlike him, I don't have this leader's attitude and a mind for business, so I can't be a part of this bigger picture, like my father said. And so I decided to create a bigger picture of myself, become Caitlin Sharp, not the daughter of Sharp. She looked at him and said with a small smile, I stepped into the world of entertainment when I was 8 years old. With my performance on stages and in movies around the world, I fulfilled my own dream faster than I thought. I finally stepped out of my family's shadow. She smiled. What about you, Mr. Japanese but not Japanese? I live on my own since the day I was born. Caitlin gasped and was about to say something, but Naruto quickly added, not like that. There was an accident, and my parents thought I was dead, so they returned to their home and didn't know that they left me there on my own, Naruto said. I grew up with the dream of becoming the leader of the village I lived in. It was really hard at first, but slowly I think that the villagers finally recognized me and accepted my existence among them. Then 2 years ago, my parents found out I was still alive and brought me to their homeland. Naruto continued, but then I suddenly realized that they weren't the people I thought they were, doing a lot of bad things in the past that I can't accept. So, I decided to move out and stay on my own. After all, I had always been alone most of my life, so I'm kind of used to it by now. He chuckled bitterly. Nobody likes to be alone, Naruto, Caitlin said softly as she took his hand into her hands. No matter what they did, Naruto, the past is the past. What's important is that they love you. You're their son, Naruto. Caitlin. Naruto looked at her and smiled. Thank you. His hands tightened around her smaller ones. My pleasure, she smiled at him, and leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes, but the smile never left her face. The buses arrived at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Manhattan, New York City at 12 o'clock noon after 5 hours of traveling. If not for Caitlin, who sat next to him and got a lot of amusement tricks to entertain him, Naruto would have been bored to death because sitting in the same place for 5 hours straight. Caitlin was a little sore, but she quickly got out of the book and stood next to Naruto, holding the guidebook in her hand. She read. Did you know that this museum is the largest art museum in the United States, and among the most visited art museums in the world? She read excitedly. Its permanent collection contains more than 2 million works, divided among 17 curatorial departments. You're slowly turning into Athena, you know. Caitlin looked at him questionably. I mean, the smart kind of girl, which says everything can be found in a book. Oh, you do compare things around you a lot with the gods in Greek mythology, don't you? She smiled mischievously, and I do remember that you said she's Caitlin Sharp, not Aphrodite. Naruto chuckled while scratching the back of his head. Luckily for him, Daniel came to the rescue. Konbanwa, good evening, my friend, he said happily at Naruto, looking around the blonde's shoulder. Who's your, oh my god, Caitlin Sharp? He cried out and tripped over himself, nearly falling to the ground if not for Naruto, who quickly caught him. First did you keep your damn voice down, Naruto said before letting go of his arm, making the boy fall down to the ground, and Konbanwa's good evening, Caitlin giggled, using the guidebook to cover her mouth. Let's go guys, the others are already coming in, the singer/actor said, motioning her hand for the boys to follow her, which the black one did faster than Naruto could even blink. Shaking his head, the Prince of Olympus quickly followed them, but when he was midway up the steps that led up to the museum, Naruto stopped when he suddenly felt a slight tingle at the back of his head. Turning his head back, Naruto's eyes were met with a bus with the World Yancy Academy on top of it. The students inside began to move out of the bus, and he could see that most of them weren't the best kind of teenagers you could find, most of them around the age of 15 and 16. But 2 of them caught his attention the most. One smelled like goat while the other smelled like the sea. And there was one explanation for this. One was Satyr and the other was a demigod. Did you guys know that this collection presents works of art all the way back from classical antiquity and ancient Egypt, paintings and sculptures from nearly all the famous European artists, and an extensive collection of American and modern art? The museum also has many relics of African, Asian, Persian, Byzantine, and Middle Eastern art. The museum is also home to large collections of various instruments, costumes and accessories, antique weapons and armor from around the world. Several notable interiors, ranging from 1st century Rome through modern American design, are permanently installed in the Met's galleries. Naruto groaned and inwardly cursed. He didn't spend much time around Athena to truly understand her. However, if he didn't know any better, he would say Caitlin was one of her demigod children. However, Athena was a virgin goddess. He doubted she had any offspring, because of her oath. Cool, Daniel nodded with a dazed smile, walking next to them into the museum. The 3 of them were at the back of the long line of Harvard students. Not cool at all. He snatched the book from Caitlin's hands, much to her surprise. Caitlin, where is the fun of the tour, if you keep on reading about it in a guidebook? Well, this is my first time came to this museum, so... She laughed nervously. Naruto chuckled before putting the book into the bag she was carrying, zipping it up and smiling at Caitlyn. Don't take it out, you got me and this guy here. He motioned his head to Daniel, who then nodded rapidly, to help you. I might look Avashian descent, but I once lived here so don't worry about getting lost. Okay then Caitlyn nodded her head slowly, I'll trust you. Okay let's go, we're falling behind. Since the Harvard students were old enough to take care of themselves, they soon separated into smaller groups and went on their own tour around the museum. They could do whatever they want all day as long as they returned to the bus stop at the end of the day with enough information for an assessment test. Naruto, Caitlyn and Daniel gathered into a group of 3 and headed to the Greco-Roman section. Since Greek mythology already piqued their interests, all because Naruto read too much on the subject around. Daniel and Caitlyn walked along with the mysterious blonde, silently observing him. Here we go. Naruto and his little group entered the section. Right in front of them were 3 statues, standing at the height of roughly 12 feet. The middle statue was that of a beautiful woman with long curly hair. A long robe was carved into the statue, while pieces of Greek battle armor and an imperial gold helmet stuck to her head, which was decorated with pictures of griffin and owls. Holding a spear in her hand and a shield on the other, the woman looked like a symbol of the war maidens. The statue on the left represented yet another young woman, only this one was carved with a cloak hiding her modesty. Her hands were put together in front of her with her palms facing upward, holding a small flame made out of gold. Though her features were hard to make out, Naruto could see a small smile on the statue's face, and was very thankful of the artist for keeping the woman's very own characteristic on her statue. The last statue was that of a young woman, looking in her teenage years, wearing a long tunic and wielding bow and arrows on her back, her hand resting on top of the head of a deer standing next to her. Athena, Hestia and Artemis. Naruto spoke up, nodding his head, the 3 virgin goddesses of Olympus. Artemis? You mean the man-hating goddess? Daniel asked, pointing his hand to Artemis's statue. What's with the deer? The golden deer, Serenian Hind. Naruto said as the 3 walked to stand in front of the huntress, her sacred animal. She's always one of my favorite goddesses when it comes to myth. Caitlyn spoke up, smiling at the immortal huntress's statue. Not that I have problem with boys, but I always wonder what it would feel like to be free all the time, like her. Well, you should consider joining her hunt. Naruto smiled, patting her shoulder. I'm sure the rank of huntress is still available. Come on dude, you talking like she's real. This one is Athena. Naruto moved on while ignoring his annoying friend. This, however, piqued Caitlyn's interest. She is the goddess of wisdom and war. Naruto then muttered, knowledge is power. Shikamaru taught him that during his short visits, but Athena was the one who taught him about the power of knowledge better than anyone, even though she didn't do it directly. She was someone who could decide the fate of a battle before it happened through pure strategizing and data. She was literally the smartest person he knew. Even Shikamaru and his late father paled in comparison. The goddess who's afraid of spiders, Daniel said sarcastically. A war goddess, afraid of a spider. Well, she is a girl, right? Caitlyn shuddered. Those creepy things with tiny, little legs and many eyes. You hate spiders? Naruto asked with an amused smile. This was even more proof to back up his theory about her being a child of Athena, even though such a thing should be impossible in his opinion. I hate any insect with many eyes and legs. I can understand. Naruto nodded. Everyone has their own fear, even himself. So, I guess the last one is Hestia. Caitlyn looked at the last statue, the goddess of the hearth, home, the right ordering of domesticity, and family. That's right, Naruto smiled softly at the statue of his most favorite goddess, and Hestia, my favorite goddess. There were no words to describe the kindness Hestia showed him these past 2 years, even though it has been 3 months since her last visit. Hestia was the one who brought him back to Elemental Nations every weekend, to visit his friends these past 2 years under his parents' nose. She was also the one who helped him adjust to the life in the mortal world, giving him some money the first few months before Naruto got himself a part-time job to earn his living. Unknown to the Olympians, Hestia was also the one who was hiding his presence from them. She was literally breaking a few laws her youngest brother made recently ago to protect Naruto. No, she didn't break any ancient laws. Since demigods often reminded people of their parents' domains through their appearance and actions, Hestia soon realized that because Naruto was the son of Olympus's king and queen, even if it was their mortal counterparts that conceived him, he would have the same problem. As soon as he found out about his heritage, Naruto started comparing everything around him to the Olympians' domains. This was very dangerous because Naruto couldn't control when he was going to say their names out loud, so Hestia overrode the magic Zeus created with her power. He wouldn't be too happy if he found out Hestia could override his law that easily, but that was understandable because after all, she was more powerful than him, and cared for family Moreso than he ever did. Let's go boys, we still have a lot to see. Caitlyn called for them, and pulled the 2 boys further into the area. The 3 then came to a bunch of students who Naruto recognized to be Yancy Academy's group. They were gathering around a 13-foot tall stone column with a big sphinx on the top. Around was the carvings of Hercules' 12 labors. The teacher, who was sitting on the wheelchair, was telling the students about the carvings on this stone. Surprisingly, the two kids Naruto saw back then were present among them as well. Caitlin was surprised when Naruto suddenly pulled out a cap and turned to her, gathering her long golden hair into a bun, before putting the cap on her head. Some of the student might recognize you, Kate. Naruto smiled at her. We wouldn't want to disturb the teacher's lecture after all. Thanks. She smiled at him and pulled the cap down, blushing a bit. Naruto turned back to the group, listening to the teacher's lecture just like the other younger students around him. He then realized Daniel was smiling mischievously at him. What? Thought. His attention then returned to the studying class when he heard the teacher ask that. Titan, the boy with the scent of the sea, corrected himself. And he didn't like his kids, who were the gods. So, Kronos ate them, right? But his wife hid baby Zeus, and gave Kronos a rock to eat instead. And later, when Zeus grew up, he tricked his dad, Kronos, into barfing up his brothers and sisters. The boy continued with his answer. You, said one of the girls. Bro, now that is disgusting. Daniel grimaced. Awful, how can he eat his own children? Caitlin winced at the thought. Paranoia, was the Naruto's one-word answer said. Apparently, that was something hereditary. Hopefully he wouldn't become like his father and his evil grandfather. And so there was this big fight between the gods and the titans. The black-haired, green-eyed boy continued, and the gods won. He just summarized a godly battle. Naruto started, in a couple of sentences. Nice, he chuckled. Like we're going to use this in real life. As if it's going to say on our job applications. Please explain why Kronos ate his kids. A girl with red hair among the group of students whispered to her friend. She does have a point, dude. Daniel thrust his elbow into Naruto's rib slowly. He always wondered why his golden-haired friend only read Greek mythology instead of something else, like thriller novels. And why, Mr. Jackson, the teacher asked, to paraphrase Miss Bobafett's excellent question, does this matter in real life? Said the boy who smelled like a goat muttered. Shut up, Bobafett hissed, her face a brighter shade than her hair. Naruto watched Jackson's actions very carefully. To him this boy was clearly a demigod, but he did not seem to know about his true origins. Hester didn't tell him much about demigods and their relationship with their godly parent, but she always had this sad face whenever they talked about it. I don't know, sir. That was the answer he was expecting. I see. The teacher looked disappointed. Well, half credit, Mr. Jackson. Zeus did indeed feed Kronos a mixture of mustard and wine, which made him disgorge his other 5 children, who, of course being immortal gods, had been living and growing up completely undigested in the Titan's stomach. The gods defeated their father, sliced him to pieces with his own scythe, and scattered his remains in Tartarus, the darkest part of the underworld. On another happier note, it's time for lunch. Mrs. Dodds, would you lead us back outside? Speaking of which, anyone hungry? Daniel asked, checking the clock. Yeah, let's go. Naruto nodded, and with that, the three went to the cafeteria. Caitlin, if you're friend with fish cake here you will have to get used to this, Daniel told the gasping idol, who was freezing with her eyes as white as dinner plates, and jaw dropped to the ground in shock. Because sitting right in front of her, Naruto was enjoying his own lunch in a way that could only be described as extremely disgusting by the girl. Not only was he eating his 15th burger, but he also eating it very fast as well, like he hadn't eaten anything for days, maybe weeks. At his left were multiple wrappings of finished burgers, while at the right was a mountain of burgers he bought from the cafeteria a few minutes ago. Where do they all go? She asked, looking at Naruto. You should eat something. Naruto looked at Caitlin's lunch. It was only a triangle piece of sandwich and vegetables, with a bottle of milk at the side. You will die, if you eat like that. And I will live healthily, if I eat like you. Ugh, Caitlin rolled her eyes. Sorry, I would like to keep my figure. What's with girls and keeping a figure? Daniel asked. He was eating his own burger and sipping on a cup of soda. So far, the guy had become more comfortable with the fact that he was sitting next to and enjoying lunch with Caitlin Sharp. Duh, it is a girl's thing. Caitlin smiled at him. We like it when guys notice us and see how attractive we are, especially at this age. Lame? Naruto spoke up. He only loves Ronda Rousey, the kind of woman who can hit hard and fight harder. Daniel shrugged his shoulder, before quickly lowering his head to dodge an incoming paper bag, balled together and thrown at him by Naruto. Caitlin couldn't help but giggle at that. I actually prefer ramen over this thing, but the cafeteria doesn't sell them, so I guess this will work for now, Naruto said as he got to his 18th burgers. And you said you weren't Japanese. Hahaha, he laughed sarcastically. But right at that moment, his eyes caught something very interesting. It was the boy, his last name was Jackson, following the pre-algebra teacher to the back room of the museum. What caught his attention the most was that the curly brown-haired boy was looking at their Latin teacher, like he was begging for him to help. The kind of eyes the teacher was giving to Grover was something Naruto only saw on his teachers like Kakashi or Jiraiya. The kind of eye could only be found on an experienced man who spent years and years of guiding young ones to become strong. Sorry guys, Naruto used a handkerchief to clean his mouth before standing up. Bathroom, he said shortly, walking away but not before grabbing a burger and pointing to his lunch, saying, don't touch my food. What was that all about? Daniel asked Caitlin, who only shrugged her shoulder. Turned out, Mrs. Dodds, as Percy Jackson called her, was an ugly bat-like demon. From an ugly pre-algebra to teacher something even more ugly, with a bald head, grey skin, bat-like wings, long talons and a mouth full of teeth. She was a typical Greek monster. Since most monsters didn't appear like the carving of the ancient people, Naruto wasn't so sure which type this monster was, but it could talk, it could think, it could disguise itself into an old lady, so Naruto could only say it was powerful. Hiding carefully in a corner, Naruto unwrapped the paper bag around his burger and started to watch. If things started to turn out too bad, then he could lend the kid a hand. The next moment Naruto turned his eyes to the doorway and saw Mr. Brunner, the Latin teacher of the Yancy group, wheeling his wheelchair in with a pen in his hand. "What? Oh, Percy," he shouted, and tossed the pen through the air. Mrs. Dodds lunged at him, and at the same time Naruto pulled out his kunai. It was like watching a thriller movie, but this time Naruto would do something about it. With a yelp, Percy dodged and felt talons slash the air next to his ear. He snatched the ballpoint pen out of the air, but when it hit his hand, it wasn't a pen anymore. It was a bronze sword. "Now that's cool," Naruto said in amazement. He had to make sure to ask Kasha for something like that. It's not like he was being a spoiled brat or anything, but a pen that turned into a sword was too good to pass up. Mrs. Dodd spun toward Percy with a murderous look in her eyes. Naruto raised his hand, the kunai ready. She snarled, "Die," and flew straight at him, and Percy did something that was natural when you were holding a sword. He swung it, but from the look of it, her talons would get to his head even before she could perish into golden dust. Naruto threw the kunai with the speed of sound, even faster than a bullet leaving the barrel of a gun, and pierced through Mrs. Dodd's head, even before she could realize it, killing her. Mrs. Dodd's body exploded into golden dust, vaporizing on the spot, leaving nothing but the smell of sulfur, and a dying screech as well as a chill of evil in the air. "My job here is done." Naruto sneaked away without Percy or Mr. Brunner noticing. But the old teacher did feel something strange with the way Mrs. Dodds just died. "I'm back." Naruto smiled at his two friends, sitting down the spot opposite from Caitlin, and grabbed another burger to eat. "What took you so long?" Daniel asked. "Got lost on the road of life," Naruto said simply. His eyes glanced slightly to Percy, who was slowly exiting the back room with total confusion on his face. "Really?" Caitlin deadpanned but was nonetheless amused. "There are a lot more things you don't know about me, Kate." Naruto smiled. The kunai he left there would do its job, hopefully. Mr. Brunner wheeled his chair back into the back room of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, deep in thought. This situation was worse than he thought. One of the Furies was here, Electo to be precise, to hunt a boy down. He couldn't imagine what kind of monsters would be sent in the near future to kill the boy, in order to get back what was lost. Olympus, for the past 2 years, was in the state he'd never seen before. There were rumors about the gods, were searching for someone, but other than that, a simple teacher of demigods like him wasn't allowed to know. Brunner stopped at the sight of a weapon, embedded deeply into the wall. He examined it carefully. This was a kunai, a weapon originating from the Far East, more precisely, from Japan, where ancient warriors called shinobi used it for assassination and combat. He could recognize it anywhere, since some of the demigod children of Hephaestus tried to make them before, but the project was shut down soon after, because they were really hard to use, and weren't suiting the traditional demigod's fighting style. Grabbing the hilt, Brunner gathered all his strength, and pulled the kunai out of the wall. It must have been thrown with an extremely powerful force, and flew at least the speed of sound, to give this much damage and impale this deeply into the stone wall. No normal human was capable of such feat. He should report this back to the Olympians, they should know about it. "What about Roman's art? Should we add them as well?" Daniel asked as he was rotating the pen skillfully with his hand, deep in thought. After finishing their lunch, the three quickly finished the last collections of Greek and Roman's arts. It took Naruto and his friends 3 hours to do so, but in the end they managed to gather together around a table at the cafeteria, to do the assessment tests together. They still had around 2 hours, before they need to return to the bus station to return to school. Caitlin was handling her own assessment report rather better than the two boys put up together. It wasn't like Naruto couldn't do it. He was thinking about that boy he just saved from a monster in the museum, and the things it said to him. Clearly it wasn't something very normal at this timing. While looking up the sky, and he could already see the end of the world coming near. "Naruto, hey Naruto," Caitlin called out to him, waving her hand in front of his face. "Huh? Oh yeah." He was snapped out of his thought by this. Turning to the girl he asked, "Did you say something, Kate?" "Nothing, it's just you spaced out a lot." After returning during lunch, she said, tilting her head to the side. "Was something wrong?" "Nothing, just thinking actually." Naruto laughed, scratching the back of his head. "You sure, Fishcake?" Daniel asked, pointing the pen at him. "You seem like someone who just saw something really weird or really sexy." Chick. A smirk made it to his face when he got to that part. "So, blonde or brunette? Can you knock it off?" Naruto swatted him across the head, nearly sending the boy to the ground. "Find yourself a girl, idiot. Don't waste your time by poking your nose in my business." "Ouch, Akmon, I was just kidding," Daniel said, massaging the back of his head where Naruto hit him. But still, I'm very surprised to see such an attractive guy like Naruto is still single, Caitlyn said, eyeing Naruto up and down. She had to admit, while Naruto always wore the kind of clothes that didn't show off much of his athletic figure, muscles could still be noticeable under those shirt and jacket of him. Naruto didn't look like the kind of boy who went to the gym every day and trained just to impress the girls to her. He even didn't join any sport clubs at school, and yet she always heard some of the girls talk to each other about how well built Naruto was. Not to mention that he was really handsome and somewhat cute with those adorable whiskers on his cheeks. Oh, you have no idea, Daniel chuckled. Yes, this guy is single, but a lot asked him out already. And your reply was, I treated him ramen, you see? Naruto chuckled nervously, while scratching the back of his head. Even at home, girls asked him out a lot, but Naruto just couldn't think about forming a serious relationship with any of them at the moment, so he treated them with a bowl of ramen at Ichiraku. He didn't accept or refuse, so you can say that a lot of girls are still putting hope in this. The could have though our boy is so popular, Caitlyn giggled. Guess I will have to work harder then, in order to give myself a chance. She leaned in closer to Naruto, much to his confusion and Daniel's shock, her ample bust pressed against his arm slightly. What are you doing? He asked, backing away a little. Just kidding. The blonde singer returned to her normal position, and picked her pen up. So, let's finish this, and go home guys, and return to her report. What was that all about? Naruto asked Daniel, who only shrugged his shoulders. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification, and also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.